Well, first and foremost, I think that like the whole control thing is a big ego thing, right? So, I'll talk to people in leadership at veterinary practices and they don't want their team members to have a personal brand because they have like a ego-driven scarcity mindset, however you want to kind of look at it, of that's going to somehow take away from the business, when in reality, somebody building a great personal brand that really reflects your values and is out there in the world, that's just going to drive business and also help recruit for you. So I think there's like ego in that kind of control factor from like a leadership standpoint. I think there's a lot of ego with the control factor as like a personal brand of being like, oh, I have to curate this perfect thing, or else I'm unsafe, right?
Welcome to Leading Veterinary Teams, the podcast for people-first leaders in veterinary medicine who are ready to ditch the burnout script and lead with purpose. I'm Suzanne Thomas, veterinary technician, executive coach, and fellow leader in the trenches. Around here, we talk real-life leadership, boundaries, influence, team culture, and what it actually takes to build happy, high-performing hospitals. No fluff, no guilt, just the truth, some tools, and maybe a little tough love. If you're ready, let's get into it.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll just go ahead and jump in and start. First of all, thank you for joining me. For anyone who doesn't know Danielle, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So I have a really extensive background in the veterinary industry. I managed a practice for 5 years. That practice belongs to my family. I fell in love with the marketing side. You might know me from starting a company called Snout Group, where I was teaching veterinarians how to market themselves online. That really turned into an agency called the Snout Group. And that's been a really fun place where we are developing brands for really like full out new build kind of clinics and making it so like your Instagram matches the wallpaper in the bathroom. Like we're really going all out, like with really cool stuff in terms of brand building, world building, all of that jazz. I fell so in love with that now I'm really taking what I do outside of just being in the veterinary industry. The veterinary industry is always going to have a special place in my heart. My dad's a veterinarian, my brother's a veterinarian, but now I'm really focusing on building out my own world outside of vet med and really helping people build brands that are going to withstand the test of time. I have a mastermind called The Long Game, and I really like to make sure that entrepreneurs are building something that they feel lucky to own, that they feel really like they're having a good impact on the world, and that their team is really empowered within. Those kinds of things are really important to me, which is what has always kind of attracted me to you and the work that you do, because I think that you are such a great advocate for the team side of things and not just making vet med about veterinarians all the time. So I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I think that there's this narrative, right, that the vet is at the top, and maybe that was the case when the veterinarians were owning all of the hospitals, and now that the veterinarians are not owning all of the hospitals, I think that the narrative really, especially in those corporate clinics, really needs to start to change, that we're a team, and that medical director and that associate veterinarian, you're not necessarily my boss, you're my teammate. And so that, and it's hard, right? Because as a technician, it's hard to get out of that headspace of, well, they're the people who tell me what to do. Are they though? And so it's really been the conversation. I'm trying to just challenge that kind of status quo, if you will, of is that really the person that you should be saying boss to,
Yeah. We love a status quo challenge. I love that for you. I'm so happy to see people because it's been hard for me to say I'm going to leave my leave the veterinary industry in a way. I'm still working with a ton of veterinarians, right? My clients are still veterinarians, but I had a funeral for my fixation on the veterinary industry. So when you start talking about things, I'm so tempted. I'm like a little Jack Russell Terrier that just wants to grab onto something and not let it go. but it makes me so happy to see that there are people like you that are really like carrying on the torch of advocacy in our space, because I think that the landscape has changed so much with private equity, venture capital, et cetera, coming in, the corporatization of vet med. It's changed. Now it's like all of a sudden we have an org chart, whereas before there was no org chart. It was just like the technician that's been here the longest is in charge, you know? So things have shifted a lot, and it just really, it like warms my heart to see people like you kind of really carrying that on. So I love that conversation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I think, you know, sometimes people get a little bit scared because, you know, we're building these brands around speaking out loud, right? And saying things that a lot of people might be thinking but are scared to say. And I think that that's one of the things that really resonated me with you, right? Like is that you do that. You say the things that you're thinking. You don't care. I mean, maybe you do care, but you don't appear to care that of what people are thinking, you know, because you're that no BS approach, right?
Yeah.
And that's what drew me to you in the first place. Why do you think that resonates with some people and triggers others?
Oh my gosh, because it really depends on where you're at in your own little timeline. Like I'm somebody, and I think a lot of people that work with animals get it. Like I really believe in like past lives and like whatever. And some people are like brand new. Like I have a tortie kitten. She's brand new to this earth. Like sometimes I'm like, do you even know how to be a cat? Right. And so I think it kind of depends on where you are in your journey. And it's something that I do have a lot of respect for, but I don't have a lot of patience for, which is probably something that I could work on. But I'm somebody that's like, listen, personal development each day, like how can I get better? How can I be open to new information and not fear change? And to your point about like building a brand that is extremely outspoken, you have to be ready for it mentally, because you are going to get pushback. You are going to be in a place where people aren't always going to like you. And you are going to have to deal with like the fallout of that, right? Like I know for sure that me being really outspoken about things like private equity has lost me opportunities, but I'm okay with that because I'm somebody that really wants to advocate for small business, independent entrepreneurs. And again, long game is the name of my mastermind, and private equity doesn't really play a long game in that way. So I have really, you know, taken on the role of being more outspoken, frankly, because like, I just can't, I can't not like and I feel like that's probably how you are too. Like for people that are really outspoken, it's just like, I absolutely cannot be muzzled. Like you will not call it a party hat and convince me that it's fun to wear. I will not be muzzled. So I think that like, it's something that is really, it plays an important role within the veterinary industry and the greater world to have people that are willing to say like the quiet part out loud. But for sure, I never want to minimize the fact that it is extremely hard to do. It's hard to do it right, where you aren't just pissing people off for sport, because like that's fun. But I think it's always important to kind of think of, I've always had Dr. Jessica Vogel saying, has always been somebody that I've looked to be my anger translator, like on Key and Peele, where he has the anger translator when he's pretending to be Barack Obama. You have to really know how to filter things so that it's strategic. Like, and that's kind of the last thing that I would say is that a lot of people, I think sometimes that think, including my own mom sometimes, thinks that I'm just throwing stuff out there willy-nilly and that this is like really, you know, just like impulsive choices that I'm making. And like, yes, I do have a very ADHD brain that does want to do the impulsive thing. However, there is such a strategy to being really outspoken, and kind of playing chess when everybody else is playing checkers is how I like to look at things. And I see things in like a bigger picture, a bigger pattern of what's going on. And so to anybody that's kind of listening to this, that's like, ooh, could I really build a brand as a leader where I am going to be really outspoken and have a point of view? 150% yes, but it doesn't have to look like how Suzanne and I do it. That is very like, I talk about spice level, and I would say both of us are pretty picante. Like we both kind of really say the full thing. It doesn't always have to look like that. And there's a strategy behind it, which is, you know, something we could kind of unpack more, but you know, I'll just ramble. I had a latte before this. You got to be careful with me.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, right? I think that there's certain things that I'll say, and we've talked about that too in the past of having that ADHD brain. I'm like, I have so many ideas and so many things that I want to talk about, and I can't talk about them all at the same time. And so having to be strategic in sharing the information and sharing it in a way that people are going to receive it, because I think that that's also something that I struggle with is being able to to give people the information at the time, like the right time.
Yes.
Because sometimes also I experience something and I'm like, I need to talk about this. And I'm like, but are they ready for this? I don't know. But
Oh,
then
yeah.
also like, I don't care if they're ready necessarily because it needs to be talked about. So there's a lot of that goes on too, of trying to figure out exactly the timing, and there's a lot of strategy behind a lot of it.
Yeah. And I think that it also depends, again, your tolerance level for the feedback, right? So I have a pretty high tolerance level for the feedback. And so for me, my personal brand, it's an art for me. It's a way that I express myself. So I will use different platforms. For example, Instagram has Threads, which is kind of their response to Twitter, X, whatever the heck is going on over there. It's just a little quick text-based kind of app that it really is kind of reminds me of the old school internet, right? And I really built my business on Twitter first and foremost, because I networked my butt off on Twitter and made friends with Dr. Andy Warwick, Dr. Jessica Vogelsang, Dr. Cody Krillman, all these people that were doing like brand stuff 10 plus years ago. So I think that you can really look at it in a few different ways. So if you're like, okay, I want to be more outspoken, you can practice being outspoken in platforms that are a little bit more ethereal in nature, where it's like, hey, I can kind of or ephemeral, I forget, whatever words, what are words, you know what I mean, like the things that aren't so permanent. Like making an Instagram carousel is like, oh my gosh, I have to design this and write this all and make 12 carousel slides. No, like that can be a lot for people. What I tell people is like, start practicing your message on things like a Threads or something like Instagram stories that are only there for a day. Like start just kind of putting it out there and practicing your message. If that's like therapeutic to you, if that's very scary for you to practice and put it out there first, you might need a different kind of strategy. Like when I work with people, I really kind of feel them out. And at the end of the day, I am going to tell you, got to go practice. But like if the idea of practicing is like horrifying, one, I'm going to probably tell you to get a therapist and talk to somebody about that, because it's hardcore. Like this is real stuff. So if like putting your full self out there is going to cause you mental anguish, like absolutely not. But if for you, it's very therapeutic to kind of put your point of view out there and it's safe for you to do that, because remember, there are consequences to this stuff, like then do it. Like I just went through a really crazy experience of being on an inpatient psych unit for about 12 days, thanks to something that went on with my thyroid. Because anybody that's followed me for a while might know I have Hashimoto's. It's an autoimmune disease that affects your thyroid. So I had this whole adventure of going to a psych unit for 12 days. It is very hard for me to not go talk about that, because I'm like, that was life-changing, life-altering. It's like for people that have had a baby, are you going to not talk about your baby? Like something big happened, you got married, you had a baby, you went to the psych unit, whatever, pick your poison. But like if you have big moments in your life like that and you feel like you can't hold them back, I think you can talk about that stuff on social. But again, remembering like how to filter it, what's the strategy here? You know, like I might talk about my experience going on the psych unit because I want to talk about things like building a business that can withstand you being gone for 12 days unexpectedly. Because my business held good. We signed actually new clients into the mastermind. The long game mastermind like kept going. I have team members that held it together. So I think that you can think about what's the strategy on it. But yeah, so if you are that impulsive one that wants to put it out there, just to say like, what is the strategy? What's my risk tolerance? You got to consider things and like that spice level of like, how direct am I going to be? But I think that people think I think you can get a lot. There's a really new definition of professionalism, which is something I'm obsessed with. And I really think that it looks a lot different than what people assume. Like, I think there's a lot of us that are holding up this like fake facade of what they think is professional. And all of us are tired of holding it up. Like, so put yourself out there, you know?
I think to that point too, like there's a lot to unpack in what you just said, but I think to that point, even going back to when I started leading veterinary teams, I felt like looking back on that in 2023, I felt like I was trying too hard. And I started about a year ago, just posted, or not even, maybe even 6 or 7 months ago, just putting some stuff on LinkedIn, and it just like organically started to just get traction. And I was like, this feels good. This is easy for me because it is me just talking and saying what feels, it is not me like trying to make it beautiful and like, yeah, I did a little creative stuff, but like it wasn't, it felt real. And then once it felt good, I was like, let me get a little bit more creative on Instagram again, and so, and now I'm like rebranding and all of that stuff because it feels right and it doesn't feel forced. And I think that, I really tried to force it in the beginning, and I know like we want to talk about ego, but the marketing side of things, right? And trying to build that brand and who I am. I really needed to figure out who I was before I could really like drive home what my message was, And so I think that kind of also brings me into the idea of this, like being a high achiever and a perfectionist and all of that stuff that also ties into the ego piece, right? And
100%.
And just vet med as a whole, this world of this culture that vet med has of like having to have control of everything. I needed to have control of this brand, and I needed to do it my way. And I was pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think, from your perspective, from the marketing piece and the businesses that you've helped build, what do you feel is that kind of connection between control and ego? And I'd really love to kind of like start moving towards the ego conversation. I do think that there's so much there, both from, you as you've built your own brand and the people you've worked with and all of that.
Well, first and foremost, I think that like the whole control thing is a big ego thing, right? So, I'll talk to people in leadership at veterinary practices, and they don't want their team members to have a personal brand because they have like a ego-driven scarcity mindset, however you want to kind of look at it, of that's going to somehow take away from the business, when in reality, somebody building a great personal brand that really reflects your values and is out there in the world, that's just going to drive business and also help recruit for you. So I think there's like ego in that kind of control factor from like a leadership standpoint. I think there's a lot of ego with the control factor as like a personal brand of being like, oh, I have to curate this perfect thing, or else I'm unsafe, right? Like people think like if I put myself out there and what if people don't like it? It's a really vulnerable thing. And it feels very unsafe and out of control. So I think ego kind of plays in a role there. And I think, when I'm working with people on this stuff, again, I joke a lot that it's like business therapy, and I do direct people to therapy quite frequently because it is a lot that we're really looking at. But I think that when we're thinking about like building a brand and where ego comes in, I think as a leader, you have to remember that as somebody who's in a leadership role, your job isn't to be everybody's mom and control a bunch of adults. That is just going to make them want to rebel. Like that's not how we retain team members. We retain team members by really empowering them and giving them a role that gives them like some buy-in to the business. And so that's why I love the idea of, people building personal brands, even if they are employees of a larger parent company, because it really allows you to see what the team culture is like, what the values are like. And you just have to not be the person that's like, I'm going to check their Instagram every single day and make sure it's exactly what I want them to do. Like you got to let go some level of control. And people always are like, well, what if they post XYZ? And I'm like, that's not a social media problem. That's a hiring problem. If you're so worried about what somebody's going to do when they're representing your brand online and they're your employee, you're hiring the wrong people. Like that's the reality of it. And so I think that's the most important thing, is that if you're going to include social media as an overall strategy for your brand, right? And you have a big parent brand and then all these different things that lead to it with different personal brands, you have to really, have a strategy in place and then teach people what that strategy is. Like what the whole marketing strategy is of the business, just like a lot of people like sharing costs of goods and like profits and what does the numbers look like has been a thing that's become more popular to share. I think that leadership needs to also share, hey, this is how we're marketing ourselves, right? Because then you've got like buy-in, and that's how you start a cult, like how in VetMed, I would, Veterinary Emergency Group did a great job of that, right? So, and I say cult in a tongue-in-cheek way.
I know.
But if you are doing a really good job and putting your ego aside in certain ways and allowing people to take ownership, then it does get those culty vibes. And that's what you want as a brand. You're doing a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, anyone who looks at my LinkedIn knows I worked there. That's done on purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very strategic. It is
Yep.
done on purpose. Like we want our friends to be jealous. We want our friends to want to work with us. But it's true. And I think that, when you're talking about what is the brand or of the parent company and the people that you're hiring, you're right? Like hire the people that are the people that buy into the vision of your company.
It's critical.
And you shouldn't be worried about what they're saying if they are buying into the vision of your company, because they would ideally, theoretically, be talking about the same stuff, right? I mean, I have buy-in from the people that I work for because they know that we're aligned. And I'm also, careful to make sure that everything that I do, I have like the disclaimer that they are my opinions, yes, just in case, because I want to protect myself and them, but also, at the same time, we're aligned. So the things that I'm saying leadership wise, I also say to my team, and they're cool with it because it's the truth. I'm trying to make them better. I'm trying to teach my leaders how to be better leaders, and it's not about me, it's about them. And same thing about the content that I'm sharing on social media. I'm not doing it to make myself better. I'm doing it to help other leaders.
You know what? I think that's a really good point too, because I think a lot of people think that just building a personal brand in general is a very ego-driven thing, that you just want attention, But like I mentioned already, for me, it's very much so a creative outlet that can be therapeutic. It is also how I form really great connections with people. There's so many layers to it. And I think that you are so smart with like the LinkedIn thing of just starting to test things out and put stuff out there and see who picks up what you're putting down, because that builds community. And there's nothing like ego driven about like wanting to build a community. It's just a very basic human need that we want to have a community around us. Like that's just our little lizard brain wants that, right? So it's not some like egomaniac driving the bus that's like, I just want followers. And yes, there are people like that, and I do not work with people that are like that. Like I'm really looking for people that want to have a bigger kind of impact. But to your point, I think about like what I mentioned about being out of office for 12 days. And my executive assistant did such a wonderful job of upholding exactly what I would be doing anyway. And that's how you know that you have a clear brand, because like they know how to take over when, shit hits a fan, frankly, right?
Yeah.
And you need that to have a business that's actually sustainable and scalable. So like what you see something like a Veg do, like that's what I like to help people do, is like, how do we create that kind of like stickiness where people are just like, I know what the message is and I can take it and champion it out there in the world as well and help proliferate the message. Where we see a lot of issues is if the business owner, thinks that they're the be all end all and they only could possibly understand the vision and nobody else could ever get it. That's where it gets like a little bit tricky, and I would have a very hard time working with that person if they think that it's something that only they have the ability to understand. Like if only you understand what your business's brand is, you actually haven't done a very good job of unpacking your brand strategy, because it needs to be something that is an operational system that can be repeated and replicated without you there.
Yeah, 100%. And that vision, that mission and that vision, it needs to carry throughout the entire organization, whether that 100%. Organization is N of one, or if it is in a national or international organization, right? Like each person needs to be bought into that and truly like that's what the culture is. And I remember I was in a meeting and it was a town hall type of situation. And there was a question about like, how are you, CEO of said company, going to keep the culture alive? And the CEO of said company turned around and was like, me? That is not my responsibility. I wrote the mission and the vision. The culture is on you, right? Like you are the culture carriers. You guys go forth and you're the ones in the clinics every single day. It is not my responsibility to make sure that every single day, every single human in this company is held accountable. I can only do so much from up here, right? Like it's everybody's job to make sure that we're continuing to carry that mission, continuing to carry that culture, if that's what you truly want. And I think that is how I see myself. And even though right now my business is just me, like the company that I work in and the people that I am around, it's the kind of the vision that I continue to proliferate, right? Is that if we want this culture to be this, then we have to live that. We have to walk that talk or talk that whatever.
Yeah. You have to walk the walk on like what you're talking about. And I think that's a big thing, when I talk about brands that are no BS brands, I mean, we can't just market BS. Like people will come to me and they'll be like, we need to hire. So it's like, yeah, we could curate this whole, idyllic, perfect, company to work for. But if it's not true when the rubber meets the road, we're going to have an issue. Like in veterinary medicine, for an example, like I've advocated a lot about paying a living wage, because if you're out here advocating for all of these things for, mental health, let's say, and all of that, but you're not paying a living wage, like we're marketing BS at the end of the day. So it's really easy to put lipstick on a pig and be like, oh yeah, sure, you want to work here, it's magical, whatever. But it's not. I think the former practice manager in me always was like, we're going to have to make sure that we're on the same page, because otherwise we're recruiting people, the expectations are not on the same level, and we're going to have a problem. And I mean, it's the same thing with like marketing to, clients too and customers, because if you're marketing a certain expectation of what the service is going to be like, right? Like I went for my honeymoon, I went on the most bougie, like vacation to Bora Bora, those places where the huts over the water, whatever. So if you're marketing that this is the bougie experience and it's the Conrad Hilton and it's the most ultimate experience, but then I get there and it's kind of a shit show, which it was in terms of service. Like we had to, I should be at a place that I don't even have to think. And I had to think. Now the expectations are not matched and I'm pissed off on my honeymoon, which is not great, right? Which was like, this is the most first world problems of all time. But at the end of the day, like if you're marketing a certain experience and you're not delivering on that experience, that's where bad reviews are born. And so that's where it is on leadership to get so clear on this stuff, pass it on to the team and have some level of check-in with them, like, yes, it's on them to maintain it day to day, but it's also something that we can't forget to like, it's like you have to run, a little maintenance check on it. You need your little oil change every couple thousand of miles.
And hold them accountable, right? It's not just like, here it is, peace out. It's here
day
it
one,
is, right? It's here it is. Let's check in 30 days. Let's check in 90 days. Let's check in, all of those check-ins. And if you're not if you're not like upholding the thing that we agreed to, then
we have a problem
about it. But also something that I've been talking about recently is this whole culture of like, well, if you're not into it, then peace out. That's not also the right idea either. Just like, if you're not the right fit, like then maybe you should leave. Is that really the right attitude? Like, I think there's more to that, because if somebody's coming to me as a leader and saying like this XYZ is not feeling right, well, if it doesn't feel right, then maybe you should just go. Like, is there something more to that? Is there something that I could be doing? Is there something in the clinic or in the hospital or in the team that is making you feel not included? Or is it truly not a good fit, right? Like, let's unpack it. I don't want to just stop and say, well, then maybe you're not a good fit. Maybe there's something I'm doing or something that somebody on the team is doing that we could make you feel like. I don't want anybody to not feel included, right? Like I am
That's
inclusive.
a slippery slope
Right.
with all of this stuff. Like you want it culty, but not clicky. You want a good culture, but not like a one size fits all kind of culture. There has to be room for like a little bit of flex, and everybody has a role to play. But I think that's like a really wise thing to say. And what I would say too is like when I'm advising leaders on the kind of content that they should put out, right? So, and LinkedIn is a great place. If you're a leader trying to establish thought leadership in the industry, LinkedIn is a really great place to put your thoughts out there. Like if you're like, oh, I wish I could speak about team culture, or I wish I could, write a book about team culture, whatever it is that you want to put something out about, and maybe you're really good at it, talking about how you handle those problems, right? So like if a team member came to me with XYZ concern, here's how I would handle it. Or like, here's how I, navigate XYZ issue, like really putting that kind of stuff out there. If people are like listening to this and are like, where do I even start with this? Those are kind of prompts that I always really will go back to. And of course, always maintaining like privacy and stuff like that and being mindful of things, but really talking about like, here's how I coached a team member through XYZ. Here's how I would handle XYZ kind of complaint from a client or a team member. Those kinds of things really show your leadership instead of just you regurgitating some crap that you read in a book about culture. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to build a unique brand that shows your perspective. Showing how you walk the walk, not just talk the talk, is how you build a brand that really withstands the test of time. Because that's another big thing. Like I can dip out for 2 weeks and be on, the psych ward, like living my best Ace Ventura laces out life. And I can come back, and I still have a business because I've spent over a decade building my brand and people know what I stand for at the end of the day. And like my clients are so ride or die. Like my clients were ready to like take over the mastermind and run it. And like, that's because they know I'm not somebody that's like, just, taking their money and running, they know that if I'm out, it's something serious. And that's why I think it's so, so, so important to be vulnerable, to share these things that are those things you're not supposed to say, because you never know where you're going to form connection. Exactly.
Be a real human, because we are all real humans.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
That's all. Crazy. Yeah.
I know, it's wild.
It's one of those things that it's like, I hate when leadership really expects everybody to just be a robot. And it's like, that's a recipe for burnout, right? Yeah. Like when I was in that psych unit, I saw so much compassion fatigue. Like honestly, my background in the veterinary medicine like industry is like one of the few things that got me through. That was a really tough time for me. But knowing what compassion fatigue and burnout look like, I was like, I see what's going on here, right? And like it makes me want to call up the hospital that like was running that and be like, I think we need to meet. Because I'm like, what we're putting out in the world is not matching, the experience that people get when they actually are in here. And so it can apply to so many things. But it's just like, first and foremost, being real, being authentic, and not trying to put up some facade. Like you said, it's like, I think especially for people who are neurodivergent, trying to put up a certain facade, if you're neurodivergent or you're chronically ill or you're struggling with mental illness, like whatever it is that's taking spoons away from you and you only have maybe one like little tiny spoon, like one of those little decorative ones. If you only have one tiny little decorative spoon to work with, like you need to create a brand that's sustainable for you in terms of personal brand. And then you need to really be strategic for your business brand. What's that all going to look like, and how is it going to be upheld, and all of that jazz? Because it isn't just, people think brand is like, we got a logo and now we're good. And it's like, there's so much more. It's like all the team culture things, all the things that you talk about. Brand is everything.
Yeah. And something that you said too was the fact that you have been building this for so long, right? And so I think that something that I take away from that is that if you start your brand today, don't expect to have it exploding tomorrow, right? Like it is going to take time. It is going to take effort. It is going to take consistent, like over time, just put the content out there. Just like even if you get nothing for a long time, that doesn't mean that you don't have one person who's paying attention. That doesn't mean that like something is going to land somewhere, and just keep building it, because that's really like the take home message I have taken from all of the conversations that we've had, all of the like branding that I've learned through the years of watching you and others, and just like putting the message out there. Because even from when I started leading veterinary teams a couple of years ago to now, you even said it earlier on this call, right? That I've matured in my brand and my message. And so you learn from your own self and your own content, and you figure out exactly what you want to do. You've even changed your brand over 100%. The last year. And so like, you're always changing and growing and moving. And unless you actually put it out there, you'll never know.
You'll never know. No. And it's very natural for things to change and grow. Like hopefully you're as a human changing and growing. So your personal brand should really be something that does change and grow with you. Right. And I think that is something you said in there though, that I want to call out, especially for the people that are in veterinary medicine, is that like veterinary medicine is such a lurker audience. The biggest lurker audience of all time. Like people will come out of nowhere and pay me, 50, 60 grand for their whole new startup practice brand and joining the mastermind, right? I will never have spoken to them before, but they'll be like, oh, I was in your Facebook group that I had for like 7 years, but I haven't had in like 4 years. You know what I mean? Like, and I have no idea who this person is. Now I do. Now, like I think of one of my mastermind clients I have in mind right now. I know exactly who they are. They're in my like inner circle, but like people are watching 150%. And I think what's really cool is you can that's why it's like, don't look at the numbers, just keep going as consistent as you can. And it doesn't have to be like post every day. Cause like I'm never as a chronically ill person going to be like, you have to post every day or else, but consistency matters in that. Like, remember that song when you were little, that like tub thumping, like I get knocked down, but I get up again. Like you gotta approach your personal brand like that. Just keep coming back. You might get knocked down and you might fall off the wagon, but get back on. And that's really where I see the people that end up succeeding in the end are the people that they keep coming back. They're not afraid to reinvent themselves, and they're not afraid to be vulnerable. Those are the kinds of brands that I see succeed in the end, especially when we're talking personal brand.
I love that. I said this earlier to you before we jumped on this. These are not meant to be crazy long, and I feel like we could talk all day. So I am going to just like ask a couple quick ending this whole shebang questions.
Go ahead. I could talk forever. It's dangerous.
I know. Me too. So if you just, and I'm going to lead with what we were just talking about. So it's perfect. But if you could say one thing to every leader who's listening right now, whether they're new to leadership or decades in, what would it be?
Stop treating your employees like they're your children. And maybe stop treating your children like that even. I don't know. Stop being a helicopter parent.
I love that. It's funny because I think you said something along those lines a little bit ago, and what I didn't say because ADHD brain, I went to something else. But what's funny is that when you treat your kids like that, they rebel. So why would you treat your team like that? Because of course they're going to rebel, right? Like it's the same. We're all human. Just
150%.
Like the dynamics are the same.
It's a very similar dynamic. So you have to really approach it. Like if you don't want the like teen that's like sneaking out of their window at night, to get out and do whatever they want to do. Not that I ever did that, but
like not to be all, hippy dippy, but the gentle parenting thing, there's something to it, guys.
100%. I'm using it on my tortie cat and it's working.
What's one lesson that you had to learn the hard way about leadership and ego?
Oh, I really do think that it is a little bit of it kind of is in that vein, right? So I was a practice manager really young. I was like 23 when I was a practice manager. So I was managing people that were twice my age, right? And so I think I was trying to micromanage and really like come down on people, and there had been no manager prior to. It was just total chaos. So I definitely fell into like the micromanagement trap. And so I think it's kind of, the micromanaging is not ever going to work.
I agree. I absolutely agree. Well, is there, I guess I'll end on two things. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you feel like compelled to share. And then
Yeah.
where can people find you?
Well, those things are kind of connected. I'll say, I talked a lot about my mastermind, The Long Game, which you can learn more about on my website, DanielleKLambert.com. But if you're like, I just want to dip my toe into all of this and I want to kind of learn some strategies for how I can be my full self online, because this sounds really scary. Danielle and Suzanne, you guys are so brave, but I cannot do that. If you're kind of in that mindset, you're like, how do I get the ball rolling? I send out 1 tip a month via email to a subscriber list called the Lucky List. So if you're like, I want 1 tip a month to be more of my full self when I show up online and start getting the ball rolling on this, you can just head to jointheluckylist.com. And it is right now, it's like $5 a month. I might be increasing the price, so depending on when you catch this, but I'm kind of reworking it and making it even better offer. So get in there early, because I have a tendency to make my offers better and better. So it's always best to buy early. Yeah, buy low. So join theluckylist.com or DanielleKLambert.com if you want to work with me.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that all the links and stuff are in the show notes and whatnot. Awesome.
100%.
Well, thank you so much for doing this and talking with me today, and all of the wonderful things that you're doing for the veterinary community and beyond. So
infinity and beyond, that's where I'm going. Thank you, Suzanne.
Thanks for listening to Leading Veterinary Teams on Air. If this episode hit home, share it with a colleague, tag us on Instagram or TikTok, or leave a review. And don't forget to subscribe. It helps more leaders like you find their way. And remember, your job is not to do it all. It's to lead in a way that lasts. I'll see you next time.